The Brisbane Olympic Games is a huge deal for current homeowners and property investors in Queensland. Now, between 1997 and 2003, around the Sydney Olympic Games, property prices down there went up by 97%. In today's video, I'm going to talk about population growth, infrastructure, the jobs boom, and where the money's going to go so that you can make the best decision possible over the next 10 years and set yourself and your family up financially for the future. Now, we all know the Brisbane Olympic Games is going to be a huge deal for Brizzy. There was an article in the Australian Financial Review recently where 7 different analysts, including some of the big boys from the biggest banks in Australia, sort of put their forecasts into the ring. Now, all of those guys in the review think that house prices in Brisbane will go up in most suburbs by between 50 to 100% between 2021 and the 2032 Olympic Games. Now, I'm not an analyst, but I am an investor, and those numbers look ridiculously sexy and exciting to me. I went on to catch up for dinner recently with Phil Anderson, the author of the incredible book, if you haven't checked it out, The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking, that looks at 250 years of booms and busts in the American market. But his thoughts on Brisbane between now and the Olympic Games is at least a 50 to 70% increase in prices as well. Now, if we look at the coming infrastructure in Brisbane, we've got roads, we've got rail, we've got the metro or the first underground line going into Brizzy. We might have the first fast rail in Queensland going in between Brizzy and Ipswich as well shortly. We've got all of the bus routes being updated, many of the train stations as well, and then the stadiums from a public perspective. So I know that they're looking at the Brisbane Footy Stadium, the cricket ground as well, the convention centre, and the showgrounds, which are all going to go or undergo major renovations, or some of them being completely knocked down and rebuilt. Now, off the back of that, they forecast in terms of the Queensland government that there'll be around 91,000 new jobs created in Queensland and around about 122,000 new jobs created in Australia. Now, it was very similar story in Sydney, where they spent around about $6 billion getting all the infrastructure ready for the Games. In Brisbane, they reckon there's going to be about an $8 billion benefit, whether that's socially or economically. And they reckon, according to Westpac, that there'll be around about a $17 billion benefit to the Australian economy as a result of winning these games. But for me personally, it's more the people that move up for the work and the people that decide to stay after the games, as well as all of those eyeballs on South East Queensland. People, athletes, tourists, all of the administration, marketing, and big dogs from the big corporations around the world that come will fall in love with South East Queensland because it's so bloody beautiful up here. They'll see the Gold Coast, the sunny coast, they'll get a taste of Brisbane, and off the back of that, many of those people, particularly the higher income earners and ballers, will end up with holiday homes in this region over the 5, 10, 15 years after this. So it's a very exciting time. Now, when preparing for this video, I didn't just look back at what's happened in Sydney, but I went back to London and all the way back to actually Barcelona in 1992. One of the exciting things about an Olympic Games for a city is it brings many years of infrastructure forward. Now, in Barcelona in 1992, they estimated that 50 years worth of infrastructure was built in the 8 years leading up. Same with the Sydney Olympic Games, like so many projects that have been planned for a long time or were on the distant horizon were brought forward. And that's the same thing that we're noticing and starting to see in Brisbane as things begin to ratchet or ramp up towards the Games. Now, we all already know that Brisbane relative to Sydney and Melbourne property markets is completely undervalued right now. I think I read from CoreLogic, statistically speaking, that over the last 50 years, the price difference between Sydney and Brisbane has generally sat between about a 45 to 50% higher price point in Sydney. Right now, in today's market, it's sitting at more than 100% above the market. In today's market, prices in Sydney are more than 100% more expensive than those in Brisbane. But what I love about Brizzy is incomes have been rising so rapidly recently. They're now higher per household than Melbourne, and they're within 6% of house incomes in Sydney. We also know that we've got some of the lowest vacancy rates in the entire country at the moment. And since COVID began, we've had the largest number of people moving into any of the states in Australia, with more people coming into South East Queensland than Sydney and Melbourne combined in the last 2.5 years. On top of that, incomes are on the rise in Brisbane. Job vacancies are as low as they've been in the last 50 years. Job vacancies are as low as they've been in the last 50 years. And right now we have one of the most undersupplied property markets in Australia. Now, all of these underlying fundamentals of the actual property market combined with the extra jobs, the extra money, the extra eyeballs is going to be fantastic medium to longer term for Brisbane. I'm super, super excited about the possibility. Now, I was recently talking to one of our clients in Sydney who's been running a building company down there for the last 25 years and went through the Olympic Games in Sydney, and he said that at that time, the demand for labour was so high in the infrastructure, construction, engineering spaces that they were bringing people in from all over the country and all over the world. At the time, because there were so many people coming into the city, vacancy rates went down, rents rose, and then off the back of that demand, a huge wave of investment from Australians, from interstate Australians, and then from internationals came into the city as the world and other Australians began to speculate on the city. But it wasn't just the speculations around the Olympic Games, it was the fact that the market was undersupplied with so many people coming in at the same time, fighting and competing for houses. So that's a little bit of a wrap about the Olympic Games. As you can tell, I'm super, super excited as an investor about the possibility and those extra eyeballs getting on the market. One of the most interesting things I heard about Sydney is that from 1993, at the time the Sydney Olympic Games was announced, until 2000, prices actually went up during that period by 60%. So I know the Brisbane Olympic Games are a little bit out at the moment, sort of 9 to 10 years. For those of you who do want to take advantage before everyone comes rushing in the 5-6 years before the games, then please jump over to our website and book in a complimentary strategy session with myself or my brother Simon, where we can talk about where you are today, where you'd like to be longer term. We can deeply educate you about Brisbane, the current market, and what is expected or forecast over the next 10 years as we get closer. And then you can take that information with a grain of salt. You can go and buy something on your own now or in the future, or maybe you can become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. But either way, we absolutely wish you all the best. We are certainly the expert up here in Brizzy. We've bought more than $350 million worth of property up here in the last 7 years, and can't wait to have a chat to help point you in the right direction. But either way, we wish you all the best and all the safety, and hopefully you get in front of the market on this Brisbane Olympic Games wave.
Woo! That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. That's so nice. Oh.